Comfort me. 3, 4. Comfort me. Comfort me. Comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me. Comfort me. Comfort me, oh. Sing with me. Sing with me. Sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me. Sing with me. Sing with me, oh my soul. Speak for me. Speak for me. Speak for me, oh my soul. Speak for me. Speak for me. Speak for me, oh my soul. Dance with me. Dance with me. Dance with me. Dance with me, oh my. You want me to dance? Dance with me. Dance with me. Dance with me, oh my soul. Now one more time, comfort me, comfort me. Comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Thanks for the next one. Oh, I'm sorry, I keep touching this. We have to find out what's wrong with it. For the next one we're going to do, it's actually not in your hymnal. It's called Love is Love is Love is Love. It's by Abby Bettinas. And if I could have just a couple of the choir members, if you feel comfortable, help. It's one of these songs with like 3 or 4 different parts. You can kind of choose your own adventure there. But the basic part, which if you don't feel adventurous, you can sing, it goes like this. It's kind of sounds like an old Beatles song. Love, love, love. All you need is love, love, love. All you need is love, love. You can feel free to harmonize, love. All you need is love, love, love. Then there's a second part goes like this. You need love is love is love is love. Love is love is love is love. Oh, love is love is love is love. 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 Oh, love is love is love is love. Love is love is love. The third part goes ubi caritas. Ubi caritas et amor, where there's love, love is love. Ubi caritas et amor, where there's love, love. Now let's all sing the first thing, the Beatles part.
Good morning and welcome to the Community Church of Chapel Hill, Unitarian Universalist. I am Bill Rode, a member of the Worship Associates Ministry. Our minister is the Reverend Thom Belote. I especially want to welcome any visitors or newcomers to our church and to call your attention to the special note for you, welcome guests and newcomers, on the back side of the order of service. I would also like to welcome those of you who are attending online. The lyrics to the hymns may be found on the live stream screen, and a complete order of service is available in the link in the Sunday email and on the church website. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived at this beloved place, you are welcome here. And please, if you would, turn off or silence any cell phones, and if you would, join us this morning in standing as you're willing and able to sing opening hymn 1007 in the Teal hymnal, There is a River Flowing in My Soul.
There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm worthy. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my soul.
Back in August, when this year's theme of connection was introduced, we read in the service a poem by Marge Piercy in the back of our hymnal. A line from that poem: live as if you like yourself, and it may happen. Our Unitarian Universalist faith affirms the worth and dignity of every person, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Sometimes we struggle with this. You mean that other person? And sometimes we struggle with this. You mean me? Surely you don't mean me. This morning's service is about reconnecting to the self. In spite of the shame, in spite of the insecurity, in spite of feelings of unworthiness, in spite of our struggles. Come, let us live as if we like ourselves, and it may happen. Come, let us worship together. If you'll please join with me in saying the words to our chalice lighting in the order of service. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us.
I want to take a moment in the service today to kind of talk a little bit about the service which we're about to experience, and also to introduce two pieces of music that'll be a part of the service. First, the service today is going to touch on some heavy and difficult themes, including addiction, mental illness, and suicide. I want us to be aware of that. And I also want to know that there is care available after the service. Jen, as well as members of the caring ministry, are going to be holding space in the Kirby room, which is the room just behind the fireplace over in the Jones building. For anybody who wants to sort of talk or be in that space, I'll be dropping by as well. I also want to introduce the two pieces of music that frame the service today. The first piece, which you're about to hear in a moment, is an unusual one. I bet no other church is doing this song this morning. It is a song by 9 Inch Nails, written by Trent Reznor from their 1994 sophomore album, The Downward Spiral. It's a song called Hurt, and if you don't know the 9 Inch Nails version, you maybe know the Johnny Cash version. Johnny Cash recorded a version of it at the end of his life. It's a song that is spoken from, the voice comes from the depth of despair, the depth of hopelessness, the depth of kind of self-loathing. And it is sung from that voice, which can be a hard one to hear. But if you pay attention, there's a line at the end where it turns just softly towards hope at the end. And the second piece of music that you'll be hearing later in the service is written by the composer Jake Runestad, and it's called Please Stay. And for this piece, he takes from a hashtag called Keep Living, where people share what got them through really hard and desperate times. It's a song of hope, and it is a song about that strength to keep living.
Freely have we received gifts that minister to our needs of body and spirit. Gladly we bring to our church and its wide concerns a portion of this bounty. And if you wish to donate online, there's information on the church's website, and there's a QR code on the back of your order of service.
day to see if I still feel. I focus on the pain, the only thing that's real. The needle tears a hole, the old familiar sting. Try to kill it all away, but I remember everything. What have I become? My sweetest friend. Everyone I know goes away in the end, and you can have it all. My empire of dirt, I will let you down. I will make you hurt. I wear this crown of thorns upon my liar's chair, full of broken thoughts I cannot repair. Beneath the stains of time, the feelings disappear. You are someone else, I'm still right here. What have I become? My sweetest friend. Everyone I know goes away in the end, and you can have it all. My empire of dirt, I will let you down. I will make you hurt. If I could start again, a million miles away, I would keep myself. I would find a way.
On this morning, which is already heavy, before we have a time of joys and sorrows in our congregation, I wanted to ask us to take a few moments to be mindful, to turn our thoughts to the war in Palestine and Israel, to turn our minds to those who are suffering and at risk in that small corner of the globe and around the world. And I invite you to join with me in holding them in our thoughts as we witness the horrors of war. I ask that you join me in mourning the killing of civilians. I ask that you join me in asking for hostages to be released to safety. I ask that you join me in asking for water and food and medicine for children, for women and families. I ask that you join with me in praying for wisdom and resolve, that violence does not escalate. And in our own corner of the globe, our own nation, our own community, I ask that we be aware this day of the forces of anti-Semitism in our society. I ask that we understand that our Jewish neighbors are hurting and afraid right now. I ask that we work to build a community where our Jewish friends and neighbors are safe and loved. And in our own nation, in our own community, I ask that we be aware of the forces of Islamophobia, that we understand that our Muslim and Arab neighbors are hurting and afraid, and that we work to build a community where our Muslim and Arab friends are safe and loved. May God grant us wisdom, wisdom not only in our prayers, but in our living. Now is the time in the service where we hold a time for sharing the joys and the sorrows that we bring with us. If you've come with either a significant personal joy or a significant personal sorrow, you're invited to come forward, place a stone in the water, and briefly, in a sentence or two, share your joy or your sorrow. Let us enter into this time of tenderness and trust.
Good morning. My name's Mary Kay Moose, and I'm with the Immigrant Justice Initiative, and on behalf of the initiative, I'm here to express both a joy and a concern. First, the concern. 2 years ago, we welcomed a woman named Blanca and her 4-year-old son to the manse, and she has a remarkable woman. But like all of the mothers we have served at the manse through the Immigrant Justice Initiative, she had to make the difficult decision to leave some children behind. I can't imagine how difficult that must have been. So she left her children as she came here to try to find a better future for them. She left them with her mother, and her mother passed away. And unbeknownst to Blanca, the children headed for the border on their own. And they made it to the border, and they got across. The concern is that the 20-year-old son, Juan Carlos, is in detention, scheduled for expedited removal because of his age, which actually is against the rules. But he doesn't have a champion. We have now hired him a lawyer, and hopefully the lawyer who's in Texas will be able to argue his case and express the credible fear that he has. So I ask you to hold Juan Carlos and Blanca and David, the little boy, in your hearts. But the great joy is that the 10-year-old child, who last saw her mother when she was 8, is going to see her mother today at the airport. She got through. I'm being brought to the airport, and they will now be united as a family. So that is a joy beyond, almost on the miracle level. So thank you for your good thoughts for them.
Morning, I'm Jane Proven. I just got back from a wonderful reunion with my college friends, class of 70 from Carnegie Mellon, and we've gotten together since our 30th college reunion about 14 or 15 times in that interim, and it was wonderful. But the best part of my trip was time spent with my sister's daughter, Carrie. My sister, Peggy, passed away at age 57 back in February of 2000. She missed the wedding of Carrie, and she missed getting to know the 5 grandchildren that she has, 3 of whom are Carrie and her husband Chris's children, Desmond, who is 14, and twins, boy, girl, Remy and Coco. So I was only about 10 minutes from her house while I was up there, and Coco was the only one who was in town at that point. The other kids were off doing school trips, but Carrie and I and Coco got together. So I got to meet my grandniece, and I got a chance to share who my sister was, her grandmother. Special.
I have 2 joys today. The first is for my daughter Mary, her husband David, and my granddaughter Peyton, who turned 2 yesterday. 2 weeks ago, on Sunday morning, they welcomed a little brother to the family, Henry. The second joy is for my other daughter, Emily, who is now 36. And my joy is that she's still here with us after 4 suicide attempts, starting when she was 9 years old.
My name is Barb Chapman. I have an incredible joy. My friend Susan McDaniel, my husband John, and I made eggnog yesterday for the auction and for the greening and chili supper. And it's probably our best batch ever. And Glenn Davis asked me, do you put alcohol in it?
Final stone is placed for all those joys and sorrows that we hold in our hearts that were not spoken.
Let us sit for a moment with these joys and sorrows that were mentioned, those left unsaid. Let us approach that which we believe individually in, whether it is called God, Spirit, the universe, the divine. Let us hold these in our hearts. Each joy, each sorrow, those that we know of that weren't mentioned, those for people throughout the world suffering due to hatred and greed and ignorance. Let us caress them in our hearts, hold them tenderly. Breathe in any suffering and breathe out love and peace and hope. Let us continue this time of trust as we meditate on these that were mentioned. Joys of families reuniting, joys of having friends together, concerns for the health of family members, of friends. Let us sit with these in silence for a moment. And if you would, please remain seated as we have our sung meditation, number 18, What Wondrous Love.
What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul? What wondrous love is this, oh my soul? What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss and takes away the pain of my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul. When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down beneath my sorrow's ground, friends to me gathered round, oh my soul, oh my soul. Friends to me gathered round, oh my soul. To love and to all friends I will sing, I will sing. To love and to all friends I will sing. To love and to all friends who pain and sorrow mend, with thanks unto the end I will sing, I will sing. With thanks unto the end I will sing.
The reading this morning comes from the most sacred of all sacred texts, the truth of the human story. Earlier this fall, church member Betsy Yerison shared with Glenn, who shared with me, a link to a podcast that contains a story told by her daughter, Emily Yerison. Emily is a high school English teacher in Virginia and is a Moth Story Slam winner. The recording is of Emily telling her winning story in front of a live audience. I imagine a live storytelling event at a bar. And the story that she tells is the story of her suicide attempt and what follows. I am in awe that Emily had the courage to tell her story publicly, and I'm grateful and honored and humbled beyond words to have been given consent to speak her words. The portion of the story I'd like to share comes after she attempts to end her own life and after she is released from a psychiatric hospital. And I'll say that even though the subject matter is really, really somber, this portion of the story is told almost as comedy. And so if you are inclined to laugh, don't feel nervous about that. Here's the last third of her story, which is entitled, No Wards for Sad Ladies. About a month after I was released, impulsively I bought a ticket to the cheapest tropical destination I could find, Belize. I thought, if I'm going to go through this alone, I might as well be at a beach. There are two problems with this. First, my skin is basically made from the paper-thin tears of doves. And 2, I deeply fear the ocean, out of respect. My loved ones were not exactly thrilled with this choice. Emily, I don't know about this. Don't you feel scared going by yourself? Something might happen, and no one will know. Nah, I said, I'll be fine, don't you worry. It turns out that when I stopped having anything to lose, I didn't have any fear anymore. So I decided I was going to do all the things. For example, snorkeling. My lack of giving a damn led me to bursting into a wooden shack, money in hand, and booking a tour to snorkel with sharks and stingrays. The next day, I'm in the water, and these huge stingrays are gliding by me as if I'm not there. And I'm peaceful. And I reach out and I touch one, which you are super not supposed to do. That millisecond was it. And while I regret that it came at the expense of disrespecting the rules of human-wildlife interaction, I felt blissful. I felt I'm free to do whatever I want, to be selfish, to talk about my depression to those I love without feeling like a burden, to do more things which are not touching notoriously deadly wildlife but are equally exhilarating. And I could do none of this if I were dead. I haven't figured it all out. I have this curse, and it is not going away. But the one thing that I am 100% sure about, the way to wake up every day, is that I am still here.
Don't let your worst day be your last. The storm is strong, but it will pass. You think you can go on another day, but please stay. Just stay.
my happiness is no longer in someone else's hands.
I realize that what people say about me reflects who they are, not who I am.
It's okay to be a work in progress.
Sharing your feelings doesn't make you weak.
Some days are still such a struggle.
All I think about is Matt. I wish he was still here.
I decided to ask for help instead of going through it alone.
It was hard as hell, but I kept living.
One person took the time to listen and understand. Sometimes that's all it takes.
If I could start again 1,000,000 miles away, I would keep myself. I would find a way. I may be the only minister in the world beginning their sermon this morning with lyrics by Trent Reznor of the band 9 Inch Nails. My sermon this morning is about the ways we lose ourselves and how to find ourselves again. It's about the ways we disconnect from ourselves and how it is that we can reconnect. But before I get into that, I want to again go over just a few preliminaries. First, as I mentioned earlier in the service, following the service today, there's going to be a space created in the Kirby room. That's the room in the Jones building up behind the fireplace where anybody who wants to come and sit and chat. Jen, the intern, will be there. I almost said Rabbi Jen, but that's across the street. I'm gonna call you that one of these days by accident. Jen is going to be there, as well as members of the caring ministry. And so if this brings up stuff that's challenging or you want kind of a place to be, that's there. Also, there's another resource in our congregation that I want to mention and call our attention to. We have a group in the church called the Mental Health Ministry. They are a support group for people in our church who are caregivers or who have family members with mental illness. And it just so happens that the Mental Health Ministry is meeting at the church this afternoon at 2 o'clock. And Susan Spalt, who is right there in the fourth row with her hands up, Susan Spalt is the contact person for this group. And besides their monthly meetings for support, they also have a wealth of resources for people who have a loved one with a mental illness. And so I commend that group to you. Another thing I want to say is that I'm going to be talking about difficult things in this sermon from a spiritual or a religious perspective, but I want to be clear that these are not things we should engage purely from a spiritual or religious perspective. What I'm going to be talking about are medical issues, neurochemical issues, psychiatric and psychological issues, health issues. Religion is not a substitute for healthcare, for medicine, for therapy, for counseling. And when I speak to you today, I'm speaking not as a doctor, because I'm not, or a psychiatrist, because I'm not, or a psychotherapist, because I'm not that either. And at the same time, though, it's also clear to me that religion has something to add to this conversation. The world's most powerful program for people facing addiction, Alcoholics Anonymous, is spiritual and religious in its nature. Therapists increasingly incorporate spiritual modalities into their therapy. This includes mindfulness exercises, meditation, and so on. And this is actually not surprising because things like wholeness, healing, purpose, meaning, self-actualization are goals of both psychology and religion. Back in August, I announced that the unofficial theme of this church year would be connection. And as I thought about all the different aspects of connection and disconnection we would consider during this church year, this morning's topic loomed as the most intense, the most difficult, and possibly the most important. What does it mean to be connected to ourselves? What does connection to the self look like? And what does it mean to be disconnected from ourselves? And if we are disconnected from ourselves, how do we reconnect? In my last congregation, I had a parishioner who was a professor of psychology, and he loved to talk about his favorite psychological experiment of all time. I think I heard him describe this experiment, I'm not kidding, at least a dozen times. The experiment went like this. First, the participants in the study were screened for depression, and then a diverse group of people, some with no depression, some with very mild depression, some with moderate depression, and some with severe depression, were put in a room together and instructed to socialize and mingle with each other. While they schmoozed and mingled, they were observed and evaluated on how well they did socially. And then afterwards, the participants in the study were interviewed and asked to self-evaluate how well they had done at socializing. The people with no depression, the ones with a strong sense of self-esteem and a happy outlook on life, they tended to rank themselves as being really good at socializing. But it turns out that they were highly deluded. They actually had done a lot worse than they thought they had done. The people who suffered from moderate and severe depression tended to report that they had done abysmally at socializing. They were sure that they had failed the experiment. And they too were highly deluded. It turns out that they had actually done a lot better than they had thought. And then the researchers interviewed the participants with mild depression, who reported something like, yeah, I guess I did okay. Not great, but not terrible. I had some moments where I thought I connected, but I had some moments where I really blew it. And it turns out that their self-assessment was completely accurate. The researchers concluded that people who are mildly depressed have the most accurate perception of reality. What does it mean to be connected to ourselves? I think it means to see ourselves as we are, to love ourselves as we are, to own the good as well as the bad, to face it all, the blessings and also the painful stuff. To be connected to the self means having self-awareness, self-understanding, and above all, self-compassion. And if that's the case, then what disconnects us from ourselves is self-delusion, self-judgment, and self-loathing. So in the service today, if we're going to talk about the disconnected self, we have to mention some of the challenging ways that people disconnect or attempt to disconnect from the self. One of those ways is addiction. Whether it's addiction to substances or behaviors, addiction is an attempt, it seems, to temporarily dull the pain we feel in our lives. The pain that we can never satisfy by how we treat it. It's no accident, it's no coincidence that among one of the most challenging and one of the most dangerous addictions that our society faces right now is the opioid crisis. Literally addiction to painkillers. So often abused in an attempt to block out psychological pain, to block out emotional pain, to block out social pain. Some time ago, I preached a sermon inspired by the work and the writings of Gabor Mate. Mate is a doctor who specializes in treating drug addiction and substance abuse, and his practice is based among people who live on the streets of Vancouver, British Columbia. Dr. Mate observes time and time again how substance abuse and addiction is an attempt to disconnect from the self, to disconnect from emotional pain, to disconnect from trauma, to disconnect from shame. And I feel it's also important to recognize and to acknowledge the ultimate and most extreme form of disconnection from the self, which is suicide. Suicide is something, I don't need to say this, but that has touched many of our lives, many of our families, many of our communities, many of our campuses, many of our congregations. One resource I consulted on suicide said the following, and I found it to be provocative. It said this: there's much evidence that the thought processes of a suicidal person are often gravely disordered by the effects of trauma, mental health conditions, and substance abuse. The mind of a suicidal person is distorted and often holds the belief that they will be lessening their burden on loved ones by no longer being around. Sometimes individuals in the throes of unimaginable emotional pain are not entirely capable of making a rational decision because their depression, addiction, or other mental health condition prevents them from generating alternative solutions to their problems. There's a lot to unpack here, but I want to focus on a couple parts of this. First, there comes up in this sense of having this sense that the disconnected self does not have an accurate view of themselves. The disconnected self does not have an accurate view of themselves, what they mean to others, what their life means. I think of one of the most powerful pieces of art which deals with this theme. It's entitled, perhaps you've heard of it, it's entitled "For Colored Girls Who've Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough," written by Ntozake Shange. And the piece is written in the form of a choreo poem, a poem that's performed dramatically by a chorus of voices. The characters in the choreo poem are each named after the colors of the rainbow, and they deliver a series of poetic monologues in which they talk about their trauma and their struggles, which include abuse and violence and poverty. And the piece ends with the characters standing together and saying, repeating, and then chanting in one voice, "I found God within myself, and I loved her. I loved her fiercely. I found God within myself, and I loved her. I loved her fiercely. I found God within myself, and I loved her. I loved her fiercely." I also want to note that when we are disconnected from ourselves, we're often unable to access those well springs of hope that give us creative solutions to our challenges. I think about how around a decade ago there was a campaign that was aimed at reaching out to young lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer young people. One of the major promoters of this campaign was the sex advice columnist and author Dan Savage. And the campaign was called It Gets Better. And what it was young people or people who had experienced hardship going on social media, recording, writing, singing their own experience of being in a difficult space, but how it got better. And it ended with that refrain. That hopeful refrain, "It gets better." So how do we reconnect with ourselves? Connecting fully to the self requires facing the things in our lives that are painful or sad or difficult. It will require making peace with the things in our lives that make us feel ashamed or insecure or unworthy. And that is really, really incredibly hard to do. But that's also not the whole story. That's not the whole truth. Connecting to the self means cultivating self-awareness and self-understanding, but also self-compassion. Connecting to the self means also holding on to those larger and more expansive truths. The truth of our inherent worth and dignity. That promise that if we live as if we like ourselves, it may happen. That confidence that it does get better. That ability to say, "I found the divine within myself and I loved her. I loved her fiercely." That commitment to keep yourself and to find a way. When I was sketching out the trajectory of this service, I knew that I wanted to end with a piece that's happy and hopeful, because that's the spirit that I wanted to end on, because that is the promise that is possible. I selected as our closing a piece called "Love Will Guide Us" by Sally Rogers. It's number 131 in the hymnal, but I want to tell you a little something about it. We have 3 verses, but we actually only have 2 verses. One verse is repeated. And when they put together this hymn, when they put it in the hymnal, they picked the verses that had the same meter, because there's 2 other verses that have a very different meter. And they decided that it would be too hard to include all 4, to include 2 different meters in one hymn. And one of the stanzas, one of the verses that they left out, is the verse that I want to quote before we sing we're going to sing what's in the hymnal. But we're not going to sing this verse of "Love Will Guide Us," which says, "You are like no other being. what you can give, no other can give, to the future of our precious children and to the future of the world where we live. You are like no other being. What you can give, no other can give, to the future of our precious children and to the world in which we live in. Let us rise and sing our closing hymn together.
Hope inside of us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love is guidance, peace is
Will you remain standing and join me in reading the words extinguishing a chalice, which are in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And before we sing our final song, let's show appreciation for the musicians who are here still. And if you're comfortable, if you'll hold hands with your neighbor. If you're not, just simply cross your hands over your heart and let's sing Shalom.
Bye.